Now, on the first 2 pages of Section 8, pages 1 and 2, we're going to review the data elements that are going to be required for the planning and scheduling activity, and then we're going to show you how that planning and scheduling activity is actually integrated with the other 3 planning activities, such as inventory management, purchasing management, and then the storeroom. So the first thing we want to address is the type of maintenance work. And again, there are 2 types. There's the planned requirement and the unplanned. 1A addresses the planned work orders. Those are the PM work orders, the minor overhaul orders, the major overhaul orders, and then the projects. And remember, we're looking out into the future time periods for planning both the labor and the spare parts. If there are no spare parts available, then purchase orders are going to have to be issued, and that's that external planning and scheduling that we've talked about, which is missing in most 80%, if not more, of maintenance management organizations, and that is the planning and scheduling by purchasing of the vendor base to support these planned maintenance work orders. The second group of types of orders are the unplanned, and those would be emergency. They would also be a byproduct of maintenance work order requests that would be converted into a maintenance work order. They also would pertain to standing work orders, such as supporting the 2-bin or bench stock program, and periodically with an unplanned program, but we could schedule things like reviewing steam traps for leakage, water pipes for leakage, hydraulic systems for potential leakage, and then maybe some painting that may have to be done periodically in high volume aisles and so forth. Item 2 pertains to the shop calendar. Now, this shop calendar that we're identifying here is the identical shop calendar that we addressed in section number 7, capacity planning. So again, the shop calendar can be summarized by week and then broken down into individual days within the week and then shifts within the day if required. 3 pertains to the craft requirements. Now that's the labor portion, and the item 4 on page 2 would reflect any special tools and equipment requirements that the craft person or craft people would require for the job. We would actually schedule the start and completion dates. That's on the assumption now that the material requirements, that is the spare parts requirements or other related material, was received as a byproduct of the first step under 1A, which is for the planned maintenance work orders. And now we've integrated the planning of labor and spare parts, and now if those spare parts arrive according to the required date on the purchase order, assuming the item is purchased, and since 99+% are purchased, then we're ready to schedule, which means I could put a specific date and shift on that order and release it to a craft person, and that order goes from planning to scheduling to release in that sequence. Item 7 is to schedule the work order time elements, and the time elements are identified as preparation time. That's the time it takes the storeroom to get the parts, the tools, the equipment, and any other information that is a requirement to support the work order. Either have it in the work order staging area or deliver the material to the job site. So here you can see we've tied in now the storeroom activity with the planning and scheduling activity. 7B addresses the travel time to and from the job site, and C is the actual work time, and D is a contingency time for delay. And when most companies establish and start up their PM program, we generally indicate you should allow 5, no more than 10 minutes against a work order for the craft individual to record on the work order his or her observations and findings while on the job, and also the recommendations for operating improvement. And the other data element that would be an integral part of the contingency time for delay would be the time required to do the actual reporting against the work order relative to the detail of reporting that the maintenance supervisor would require. Item number 8 again pertains to what additional information do you require in the maintenance work order planning and scheduling function. Now, moving on to page 3, we're addressing now those time elements, but in a little more detail that we just addressed in step 2. Remember, or page 2. Pages 1 and 2 are the data elements. Now we're going to look at some of the detail elements. Now, 1, preparation time. Get the instructions, the parts, the tools, and the equipment. Okay. 2 is the travel to the job site. The actual maintenance work is for travel from and then the contingency. The planner scheduler would estimate steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. The storeroom should estimate the time that it takes item number 1. So you see the storeroom is actually supporting the planning and scheduling system relative to not only how they're going to do it, but the actual time that it will take. Now moving on to page number 4, these are objectives of the planner scheduler supported by the storeroom. And they're very simple. The work order is being charged with preparation time. Now, drive this to 0 means that we do not want to have a craft person that has been assigned a planned and now scheduled work order where that individual would go to the storeroom to get the requirements for the work order and something is short. So item 1 is addressing the storeroom support of the schedule. The travel time, drive this to 0, is really another step of how can I reduce the travel time. You're never going to get travel time to 0, but how can I reduce it? Well, you can what we call mobilize or mechanize the craft force, and that is provide vehicles of some type that are conducive to work in your operational or other types of environment. There have been many studies made relative to supporting the reduction of travel time by mechanization or mobilization. And most of the studies, at least that I have read, indicates that the amount of money that it takes to mechanize or mobilize generally can be returned in less than 1 year, because as I compress the travel time, I can increase the work time or add additional work orders to that net available capacity planned environment. And the step 3, which is the actual work time, is you want to get this up to 100% utilization and equal to or higher than 100% efficiency. And the last element, the delay time, ultimately will be dropped after the PM program, let's say, has been functioning for at least 1 year, and then that time now can be used for additional maintenance work. Now, moving on to page number 5, we're talking about the scheduling considerations, and these are the items that the planner scheduler would go through based upon the steps required to plan and subsequently schedule a maintenance work order. This would be a good outline to develop the procedures and the systems and the disciplines for these activities. First of all, we have to develop the type of work. Is it planned or is it unplanned? Secondly, we want to determine the date required. Now, if it's a planned requirement, that could be a shop calendar date. It could be a date established by a predictive maintenance input. It could be a date from a machine hour meter reading or from an odometer reading. The work required, again, if it's planned, would really come out of the maintenance requirement for that particular equipment or asset. If it's unplanned, we may have to investigate the condition of that particular asset and then develop the type of work required. The time required is a byproduct of work required. The craft requirement, item number 5, would pertain upon the type of work. Now, are there special documents that are going to be required? It's either yes or no, and if it is yes, then it's up to the storeroom to obtain that information, those documents, and apply it to the maintenance work order. In addition, we have to address the tooling, item 7, and the spare, let me go back. 7 is the spare parts, 8 is the tools, and 9 is the special equipment. So if there are tools and equipment required, then we've got the procedure for issuing those, tracking those as a byproduct of the work order system, and then those would be returned to the storeroom after the job is complete. Number 10 is a very serious question. If I'm going to take the work order from planned to scheduled then released, is the material or the equipment or the asset going to be available? And in this case, the answer to that particular question is a key step toward the integration of planning and scheduling of both maintenance and operations to be done by one person. Then the availability of equipment is not an issue anymore, and we could do a better job of scheduling not only the maintenance work order, but get the highest degree of utilization from that particular asset. Now, moving on to page number 6, we're addressing now the data elements for those work orders that are planned, and again, those that are unplanned. And since we've gone through those, I'm not going to take the time to review them, but I would like to address the notation that I have on the bottom of page number 6. It reads as follows: unplanned maintenance work orders, except a true emergency, can be scheduled. And I've mentioned this several times. So the key byproduct of planning and scheduling planned maintenance work orders will give us the ability to look ahead and be able to plan and schedule spare parts and labor. Now, depending on let's say the criticality of a unplanned maintenance work order request that would be converted over to a scheduled work order, it would give me the ability to do a better job of scheduling craft labor providing that the spare parts for future unplanned requirements are in the storeroom. And here again, the need for the integration of inventory and purchasing support of those unplanned requirements. That will give us the highest degree of utilization of craft labor. So let me kind of go back over what I've just said, and I think we could summarize that. Number one, I can plan and schedule all of my planned maintenance work orders. I can't plan unplanned maintenance work orders, but I could schedule the unplanned maintenance work orders based upon the priority of those unplanned maintenance work order requests. That combination will provide the highest degree of utilization of craft labor. Now, moving on to page number 7, we have what is known as a job planning sheet. And this job planning sheet is generally developed by the planner scheduler for either a planned or an unplanned work order. And let me just kind of walk you through the data elements and look at some of the data that is required for this job planning process. Starting off with the left hand columns, up on the top horizontal line, we have a job sequence. Now that consists of 2 data elements: the sequence number, which is straight numeric, and the description of the work. First sequence, preparation. Second sequence, travel to the job site. Third, fourth, and fifth sequences, and so on, would be the individual actual work activities that is required to perform that particular maintenance requirement. And then subsequently, another sequence would be travel from the job site, and if there is this contingency for delay, that would be the last sequence number. Moving on to the middle of the job planning sheet, we have the manpower plan. Here we have the craft requirements and the number of craft required and the estimated time by task or sequence. And the last column on the right indicates the material, which is the spare parts requirements, and then any special tools, equipment, and documentation. So you can see what we're doing is we're planning both labor and we're planning the spare parts and the other support activities like tools, equipment, and documentation. So everything that's required for the job should be identified on the job planning sheet. Then what we could do is to take the job planning sheet and move that into a preventative maintenance program or a major minor overhaul system. So if you would turn the page, looking at page number 8 is a preventative maintenance form. There are actually 4 pages that are used together in with this particular PM work order. And those are pages 8, 9, 10, and 11. So let me at least identify with you some of the data elements that are on this particular PM work order, and then we'll look at the other pages and to see how they actually support this particular job work order. Up on the top, from left to right, we have the equipment name, its location, and the equipment number. Now in the upper right hand corner, we have page number 1 of 1 or 1 of 2. It depends upon how many pages are actually required to itemize all of the steps or the sequences, or in this case, the operations that are required for a particular PM work order. The second line, starting again at the left, references the maintenance manual volume number, and that is really the number of the particular OEM's recommended maintenance requirement by either book or volume number. The page number would be the page within that particular book or manual, and then the specification number would be the specific paragraph within that page where these PM data elements are originated from. So it's an audit trail for anybody that looks at any PM order to answer the question, where did the data come from? And that's something that I recommend you consider in instituting in your PM and also major and minor overhaul applications. The next line, it indicates the date of issue, the date started, the date completed, who the PM operator was by name or by badge number, and then the last element is the PM sequence number, and that merely addresses in numeric sequence the number of PM activities that this specific PM work order had been accomplished previously. So if there was a PM sequence number 4, then that means there were 4 previously PM activities identical to what was on this particular PM form, and that supports the planner scheduler and also the maintenance supervisor to make adjustments to the frequency code if the frequency code is utilizing a fixed shop calendar. Sometimes we could over PM, and other times we could under PM a particular PM activity. Now, looking at the heading of the various columns, we have the operation number, which is similar to the sequence number on the previous worksheet. The frequency code is addressed on page number 11, and we'll go through some of the standard fixed frequency codes. Now, in the center portion, we have the PM operation descriptions, and that would pertain to, let's say, preparation time, travel to the job site, and any other of the sequences that would follow. Also would be included the special tools and equipment and documentation required, and likewise the spare parts required. And the right-hand column reflects the comments that we would anticipate receiving from the PM person or the craft individual that's performing this particular task. And here we're looking for not only time in and out on the job, but again, observations, findings, and recommendations for improvement. Then down at the bottom, we have the ability to indicate who originated this particular form and the date it was originated, and then the individual that approved the PM work order and the date it was approved. Now, I want to make a reference to 2 things. First of all, those lines that appear in the body of this report, they're very close together. Don't ever have a document, developed like this. However, this particular document was designed where the data that would be translated from the OEM manual to the PM form was going to be translated utilizing a IBM Selectric typewriter. Now, we're not selling typewriters, but I want to at least indicate the reason for the narrow lines that they appear in the body of this form. Number 2, once the data has been put on this form was fed into what was called a document reader. When the document was read, those lines were not read into the system, so that when I had the PM form actually printed out, those lines disappeared, except the vertical lines were shown as the lines in the top portion of the heading. Now, the other application that I want to discuss relative to those bubble numbers that are all over this particular exhibit. Those bubble numbers indicate where the data came from and how it is used. And those bubble numbers are shown on the following two pages, pages 9 and 10. So if you would please turn to page number 9. I'm going to look at the first item with you, and on the left-hand column we have the numbers straight numeric, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they continue on page number 10. The second column indicates the form item identification. So if you were to go back to page 8, bubble number 1 says it is the equipment name, and then the right-hand column indicates the form item and how the used source input. And that basically describes how that data, meaning the equipment name, is actually developed. So these are the instructions in terms of not only developing the PM form, but also the instructions on how anyone would read the data relative to the PM form. Pages 9 and 10 are training aids. And when you develop your own PM and major minor overhaul documents, I also would recommend you consider something like this on pages 9 and 10, which will enhance the ability of all of your craft personnel to understand what the form consists of, how the data is used by them, the form in terms of being used by other people, such as the storeroom for the preparation process, and where I'm supposed to, let's say, clock in and out on various functions or activities. It is a very excellent training aid. So I would encourage you to put together some cross-reference, which I have identified on pages 9, and also here is the balance of the form data, which is shown on page 10. Now, moving on to page number 11, we show the frequency codes, and these are fixed calendar frequency codes. And you'll notice that we have the code on the left-hand column, and on the right-hand column we actually identify what that code means. If you would look at the bottom of the code outline, there is a code called FR. FR is a temporary frequency code, and it is placed on all PMs as, let's say, a byproduct of a machine operator, or it could be a maintenance person, reflecting that they think there is a problem with a piece of machinery or a process or another asset. The concept would be, it doesn't smell right today, it feels like it's a little warm, it could have a little vibration associated with it, and other inputs that would come from machine operators or maintenance personnel or even operational supervisors. We immediately, for that asset, put the FR code in there. So every PM that comes out thereafter would have that notation, and then it would be up to the craft personnel which would receive those PM work orders to try and determine if that same condition exists. Now, you're not going to wait until the next PM activity is actually printed out. What you want to do is have somebody immediately go out and review that condition by a PM person or by, let's say, a maintenance person in an unplanned environment. If you can't find anything, then that's where that frequency code kicks in until that condition either is identified or resolved, or it may just go away itself. Now, the next two pages, pages 12A and 12B, reflect the data elements that are on most of our client PM forms. And I'm not going to, again, spend the time to read this, but let me identify some of the major data elements. The first 12 data elements are under the heading called heading information. And I think you could, just peruse through those 12 data elements, and it's something that we have identified previously in this section. The next major heading is PM activity information. And here again, this would be the body of the data relative to the sequence of the operation, what the operation is, and the times associated with it, including all of the spare parts, the tooling, and the subsequent documentation. Now, turning the page to 12B, we're looking at another subheading called the reporting information, and those are identified by steps 20 to 24. And step 24 addresses the returning of any unused spare parts and the special tools and the equipment and documentation to the storeroom. And then the last major heading is called the PM closeout steps, and those are identified by steps 25 to 30, and that is where a supervisor should review the PM work order, sign off on the work order, notice if there's any comments that may be required, and those comments could maybe make changes to the work order itself the next time it comes out. We would want to develop the utilization against the work order for that individual craft, or maybe it was a group. We want to develop the efficiency. We also want to establish the cost of the work order and any other information that is required. I think you'll find that if you go back over and review in detail the data that is on pages 12A and 12B, it should help you and support the development of your PM program, the major and minor overhaul program, and hopefully it will also support the enhancement of any planning activities that you're going to consider for, let's say, projects or a building expansion and so forth. Remember, planning is the key to reducing spare parts inventory investment, and it is likewise the key to increased craft utilization. Now, what we want to do is move into the next section, section number 9, to show some of the data elements that you want to consider relative to labor reporting against both planned and unplanned maintenance work orders, and we'll go through the calculation with you of the efficiency factor and also how utilization is developed. Starting off with page number 1 in section 9, we're going to review the data elements relative to what I call maintenance work order reporting. And starting off with the first data element, you'll notice we want to have the work order number reported. Now, some of you may say, well, where is the equipment number and the description and any other information relative to that equipment or asset? You really don't need it. All you need is the work order number, because that work order indicates and addresses all of the data required for that equipment or asset. Number 2 is we want the time on the job. Now this is a supervisor of maintenance's responsibility to address the reporting issue of craft labor. As an example, the preparation time, 2A, is really the time that the maintenance storeroom would spend in that particular activity. But do I want to have the craft person clock in and out on travel time, clock in and out on, let's say, the work time, and of course, as I've indicated earlier, the delay time is a fixed time element. So we'll look at the reporting issue a little later in this section because it's going to be important. We don't want to have people clock in and out on activities that really may not provide the input into revising, if you will, the maintenance work order, either the sequence or operation numbers or the time elements that were, let's say, estimated by the planner scheduler. Item 3 addresses the clock number or the clock numbers if we have group codes. And then item 4 is have all the spare parts been used? If not, then any that have not been used should be returned to the storeroom. And this spare part issue is something that the planner, scheduler, and the individual craft people have to communicate to each other. And that is, do we have a spare part that should not have been on the work order? Or, on the other hand, was there a spare part that had the wrong part number? Or maybe we didn't have the spare part number on the work order to begin with. So this is where we're really trying to refine, if you will, the individual planned maintenance work orders. Likewise, the tooling issue on step 5 and step 6 is the special equipment. But again, the next step is extremely important, and that is the observations and findings of the individual while he or she are on the job. And then we also want to get that input relative to the recommendations for operating improvement. All of this data on item number 7 should be recorded on the work order by the craft person or the group of people, and each may contribute a little bit of the data elements that we're trying to have them report through their observations and findings. Item number 8 addresses the issue of whether the work order is complete or partially completed, and sometimes in a multi-shift environment you may have to have the second or the third shift or back on the first shift complete the work order if the work order was not completed. And part of a company policy is that maybe we're not going to utilize overtime for the people that were originally on that particular work order. And item number 9 represents the return of the parts, the tools, the special equipment, and any documentation to the storeroom. And then again, item number 10 addresses whether or not we need additional information. Please be my guest and add to this. Now on page number 2, we're addressing the work order reporting issue. And some of these we have reviewed, but I want to go over these in detail. The preparation time is really the reporting time by the storeroom. The actual travel time to the job site, do you want to have it reported as in and out on the travel time? And when I say do you, that question is being addressed to the supervisor of maintenance. Item number 3, the actual time on the job. I would suggest that that's one time element that you definitely want to have reported. And then again, the spare parts issue, were they all used, or if not, what was the reason that they were not used? Now, 5 and 6 are the major data elements that we want from our craft people. Observations and findings, and then 6, the recommendations for operating improvement. And then 7, the actual time from the job site. And then other considerations which we reviewed previously is return of the items to the storeroom, the unused parts, the tools, the equipment, the documentation, and then return the work order to the planning and scheduling function. And then we would change any of the work order data if there is a true requirement. And then last, item 10, which I've identified relative to item 8, B and C, and that is the documentation or instructional material to the storeroom or to the file itself by storeroom personnel. Now, the next page, 3, addresses the closeout steps of the work order. And that is, we want to remove the work order from the schedule. Now remember, there were 3 steps when we talked about planning and scheduling. The first one is to plan it, the second one is to schedule it, and then the third is to release it. And now here, we're going to close that out. So this is like a continuation of tracking the individual work orders themselves. If the work was not completed, you may have to reschedule the order. Then step 3 is to calculate the craft efficiency for preparation time. That is, if someone had to wait at the storeroom for, some item, B, the travel time, and then C, the time on the job. And like I mentioned when we were in section number 8, in this section we're going to review the formula which addresses the calculation of craft efficiency, and again how utilization is also developed. And then we get into item 5, which is the actual spare parts usage, and make certain that all the items were used. And here's where we have to rely on the integrity of the craft personnel. Revise any of the data that is on the work order, and then other considerations would be revise work order data as required relative to planned orders, and last but not least is to revise the craft efficiency as required. Now, on page number 4 is the formula for craft efficiency, and as the formula indicates, the craft efficiency is equal to the work order time divided by the actual time on a task. Now, a task could be prep, it could be travel to, it is the actual time performing the work, and it could also be travel from. Again, that is a maintenance supervisor's responsibility to define the reporting issue. And then that's multiplied by 100, which brings it into a percentage basis. And then the utilization is really a compilation of the total time on a job. And we could continually add all of the times on all of the work orders, and then we can compare that to the available capacity or net available capacity of the craft person to determine how well we are utilizing that total capacity that is available per craft person. And there is a utilization coding scheme which is on page number 10, and we'll take a look at that when we get to that particular example. And if you would now turn to page number 5, we have an example of how efficiency and utilization is calculated. So the data that is going into this particular exhibit reflects the work order time elements, and those would be the preparation time. Don't forget, these are coming right off of the work order, which is 15 minutes. The travel to and from the job site is 20 minutes, and then the actual work order time is 3 hours. Now, those are the time elements that are on the work order. What was actually reported is as follows. Preparation time, spent a little more time than we thought, which was 20 minutes. The total travel time was 25 minutes instead of 20 minutes, and the actual work order time was 3.5 hours in lieu of the 3 hours that was estimated. So utilizing the efficiency formula, we're going to calculate the efficiency for the preparation, the travel, and the actual work time, and those are shown at the bottom portion of page 5 in steps 1, 2, and 3. So the preparation efficiency in this case was 75%, the travel time efficiency was 80%, and the actual work order time was 85.7%. Now, since all of these time elements are actually inefficient from the actual time used to the time estimated, one may get the feeling that maybe we had underestimated the times for this particular work order. That's the type of dialogue that must be developed between the craft personnel performing the work and the planner, scheduler, or schedulers and maintenance supervision. We want to develop this open dialogue so that as a result of actual work being performed and the reporting of time against the job, that we can do a better job of fine-tuning the entire work order system so that we can really start to see that the labor performance, efficiency-wise, is starting to be equal to or slightly greater than 100%, and that we're getting the greatest utilization out of our craft labor as compared to the available craft capacity from the capacity plan. So if you turn to page number 6, here we're addressing the issue of the utilization factor. And again, the utilization is a summary of all of the time elements on the job. So in this case, we actually had a total time of 4 hours and 15 minutes on the job. So here we have been able to develop for this job the efficiency factors, and we also have developed the utilization factor relative to this particular job. Now, on page number 7 is the craft utilization coding system that I alluded to a moment ago. The code numbers are on the left-hand column, and the activity represented by those code numbers are defined by the right-hand column. Now, this is a recommendation for you to determine what activities do I want to have reported against, what activities do I want to have, let's say, as a byproduct of some type of a management report, and then this utilization reporting activity can be done by employee, by shift, summarized, let's say, by day, summarized by week, and then continue on a summarization by month, by quarter, semi-annually, and ultimately year to date and year end. The byproduct of this craft utilization coding system is to meet the objectives that we looked at earlier in section number 8. We want to drive preparation time to 0 as far as the craft person is required, reduce the travel times both to and from, and increase the effective work time to the highest degree of utilization. So you can develop your own utilization coding system, but please consider many of the data elements that are on page number 7. Now, in pages number 8 and 9, which are the last 2 pages in this section, I am providing you with a very detailed list of different barcode applications that we have utilized. We've actually developed these working with many of our clients over the past years. So let me at least address these with you, because if you are going to barcode your maintenance work order planning and scheduling system tied in with inventory management, the purchasing, and the storeroom program, I would recommend you look at the items that are on these 2 pages, 9 and 10, before you really start to move in toward the development of your barcode system. I think you're going to find that there's a great deal of data here that will enhance your potential barcode program. So let's go through these and identify each and every item as we go through the listing. First, the employee badge number. See, I don't have to record that anymore. I could wand it if I wish. I could also barcode the work order number, and that could be for both planned and unplanned work orders. I can also indicate the PM operation numbers. Those are the sequence numbers. Those likewise can be barcoded. I can also barcode the maintenance work order requests coming in from people outside of the maintenance organization. And those requests would then subsequently be converted over to what we call the unplanned maintenance work orders. We could barcode the purchase order and also the line number on the purchase order. In item 7, when we have a parts identification tag, I can barcode the part number, but we still would like to have the part number and the description and the unit of measure on the barcode label so that we could read intelligently what that barcode identification means. We also can barcode the bin location number in the storeroom. If we have more than one storeroom, we can barcode the storeroom number. We can likewise barcode the cycle count form. We can also barcode the maintenance work order schedule number, and likewise 12, the tool identification tag, which would barcode the number but not necessarily the description. So like the spare part identification tag, which is in item number 7 above, we want to have the part number and the description legible in addition to the barcode of the tool tag part number itself. Now, going over to page number 9, we have the special equipment tag, which is identical in use to the special tool tag. And then we have the craft employee code number that can be barcoded, the purchase requisition number, the line number on the purchase requisition if there's more than one. On 17, we can actually barcode our assets out in the shop or in let's say, other areas other than manufacturing. So all assets can be barcoded. Machine operator instructions can likewise be barcoded. The machine operator number itself can be barcoded. If we have a project or some type of a facilities expansion, that project number can be barcoded. The two-bin or bench stock program can be barcoded, and I made reference to that when we were in section 4 of the notebook. We can also barcode the bench stock location number in the maintenance repair shop. We likewise, if we have a need for off-shift requisition numbers, we can barcode those numbers. And then the high security items that are in a bonded crib could have a special barcode identification tag for that item. And those items that require special environment, which is identified in 25, those special environmental storage requirements can likewise be barcoded. Any special instructional material that is to be used by maintenance personnel, that can likewise be barcoded. And then again, 27 and 28 and onward would be additional applications that you could utilize relative to barcoding. Now, this list of the barcode applications found on pages 8 and 9 should be reviewed, as I said previously, by you to determine some of the activities that you may want to consider to be in your barcoding program. You don't barcode all of these at the beginning. You develop a barcode implementation plan first, and then start to move toward additional activities like those that are on pages 8 and 9, and start to, improve or enhance the barcode program. At some point in time, you have to ask yourself the question, is barcoding for this activity necessary? Yes or no? Another question is, what's the return on barcoding? And basically, barcoding is to assist in the identification process of any document or any particular function or activity. Now, this concludes the labor reporting portion, and now what we want to do is to move into the last section of the notebook, and that is section 10, which addresses some of the financial issues relative to the purchasing activity in the maintenance management program. Now, starting off with page number 1 in section 10, we're listing some of the major management reports that you may want to consider relative to tracking and reporting the various activities within the maintenance management program. The notation that's on top of page number 1 addresses the requirement of all top management in the organization to identify the type of reports that they require, in addition to the data that is going to be shown on the report, and most importantly, the frequency of the report. So, starting off with item number 1, we may want to demonstrate the maintenance department overhead by function. And we do have a list of more common overhead activities on another page within this section. We also would like to determine the craft payroll cost, including overtime. We want to track the maintenance spare parts inventory costs. Now, that could be done by total, it could be done by commodity code or family code, and it could be also done by inventory class code. We want to report the costs, if any, or the rental of special tools, which is item 4, and special equipment, which is report number 5. If there is the utilization of outside contractor costs, then that is shown as item number 6. Now, 7 is craft utilization analysis, and that can be done by individual craft employee. It could be summarized by all of the employees within a craft, and likewise, we could get a utilization report, which would be kind of an average utilization of the entire maintenance organization, that is all craft personnel. So again, we have the ability to develop different types of utilization analysis. Craft efficiency, again, can be done by individual. It could be done by specific group, that is the craft group, and then it could also be done by total craft maintenance personnel. We likewise, on report number 9, would be able to report all of the costs associated with maintaining each and every equipment and or asset. Now, continuing on, and page number 2, we can also report the equipment downtime versus the running time. Now, the running time versus the downtime should be reported when there are requirements for operations to use the machine. If, as an example, you're operating one shift, you're not going to report that the second and third shift has downtime. The downtime in that case should be reported in terms of lack of sales orders. So the running time versus the downtime is when there are actual requirements by operations, and let's say a machine or an asset actually goes down because of a specific problem. Report 11 is the training cost for the maintenance organization, and that could be subdivided into training of craft personnel by the various activities such planning and scheduling, the purchasing system, the inventory management program, the storeroom personnel, and that could even be broken down further to training costs for, let's say, the implementation of cycle counting or any other types of cost relative to training. Report number 12 would be special project costs, and then 13 would be the data processing costs, and in this case, that should include the training required to implement many of the activities found in CMMS. And then item 14 and beyond are other reports that I have not listed on pages 1 and 2. Now, moving on to page number 3, we're looking at some financial accounts that we may want to have the financial department support maintenance management in establishing these particular accounts. The first one would be the maintenance labor by craft, and secondly, we would have the inventory of spare parts, and those could be by individual part number as well as by commodity code and or the inventory class code. The inventory account for special tools, the inventory for special equipment, and then item 5 would address, let's say, the supply items used by the maintenance department. Item 6 would be the contract expenses, and 7 would be the various data processing costs. And 8 would be the overhead by function within the maintenance management organization, and 9 would be other costs, and 1, as shown here, A, would be training and so forth. Now, some of the items that I've identified on page 3, we've looked at in terms of reports on pages 1 and 2. So to get the report, I have to establish the account so that I can accumulate the data. So pages 1 and 2 is to prompt you and your top management to determine the types of reports, the data required, as I said earlier, and the frequency of the report. And once you make that definition, then we have to establish the different financial maintenance accounts to support the report requests. Now, moving on to page number 4 is a complete listing of all of the various overhead functions that we have found in not all but most maintenance organizations. Item 1 would be plant or facilities engineering, but that does not mean their total, let's say, overhead costs would be charged to maintenance. It is that portion of plant or facilities engineering that is used to support the maintenance management program. Secondly, we would have maintenance supervision. Then third would be those individuals in the inventory control or inventory management function. Then 4 would be the purchasing activity. 5 is planning and scheduling. 6 would be the quality control, which would pertain to receiving inspection. Item 7 would be the stores or the warehouse costs. And 8 would be the material handling cost, which would include the labor portion for supporting the transporting of, let's say, maintenance work orders to the job site. Any clerical positions would be recorded in number 9. Data processing would be found in 10. The supply items and so forth would be found in 11, and again, others would be indicated by 12 and 13 and so forth. Now, the overhead function should be represented in dollars, and then these dollars would be amortized over the craft labor hours, and generally that would be expressed in a percentage. So let's say that for every labor hour there was going to be a need to utilize 140% of overhead dollars. So the labor cost per hour would be added, the overhead function, and that would be naturally converted into dollars. And a little later, we do have an analysis here of the cost of an asset, which includes the labor, the material, and the overhead activity. It is really up to the financial department to support maintenance management and how we can equitably distribute the overhead costs to all of our maintenance work orders, both planned and unplanned. Generally, it is a function of labor hours. Now, moving on to page number 5, we have a very detailed analysis of various inventory financial reports. And again, those would be a byproduct of various activities within the storeroom, and likewise through the purchasing system, that is through purchases, and through the inventory management program, and that is through stock replenishment requirements. So starting off with item 1, we would have the total inventory on hand. And then that could be subdivided into item 2, would be the class code 1, 3 would be class code 2, and item 4, the stock would be the class code 3, which we say are called the other stock items. And then part of that, don't forget, we have a total of 18 class codes. So item 5, the safety stock, is really part of class 3, but if you look at your inventory class codes, that is really identified as class 4, and then so on. We would also be able to track the bench stock inventory program, and then we would have the projected parts requirements for both planned and unplanned items and the return of those parts. Item 9 would represent the shelf life items, and 10 is the obsolescence cost. 11 would be the cost of the cycle count errors and their particular adjustments. Item 12 would be any overstocked items, and those overstocked items are a byproduct of engineered projects where we mentioned earlier that we could return the standard items that are in the storeroom to the storeroom, that is from overruns, if you will, for engineered projects. And that would really be the responsibility of the engineering function to financially support that overrun until that inventory was actually used. Well, they're not going to support it. What we're going to do is charge their department with that added inventory and the carrying cost associated with it. We also would have the beginning inventory, which is really a byproduct of one above. If we want to look at a 4-wall inventory analysis, to that we would add all of our receipts. That would be a summarized figure. We would reduce that by all of the issues, and therefore we would have the ending inventory. So 13, 14, and 15 kind of work together relative to a 4-wall inventory analysis. Then 17 would be the repair costs for both external as well as internal repair. 18 addresses all of the returns to suppliers. And remember now, all of these activities are to be defined in terms of dollars, not necessarily by part number, description, unit of measure, and the cost of the item. It's summarized by dollars. Supplier rejects would be identified by 19. Then the financial responsibility that we would have relative to supplier stocking programs, which would be consigned material in, and then the cost associated with tooling and special equipment. And then 23 is another opportunity for you to add to this list of financial inventory reports for spare parts and other items generally found in the storeroom. Now, the next exhibit, page number 6, is addressing the items relative to work order costs. And item 1 is the maintenance labor. Item 2 is the spare parts that are used by the work order. 3, any tooling, and 4, equipment that may have to be rented for a particular work order. And 5, here is where we identify the maintenance overhead, and some work orders may require contract expenses, and item 7 may be some other unique applications that may be charged to a work order, and one that I could think of immediately would be the cost of utilizing facility engineering services. which would be internal contract expenses as compared to 6 external contract expenses. And so those would be the data elements and the associated cost, and they would be summarized, and that would give us the total cost by work order to maintain the assets within the company. Now, the last exhibit, page number 7, identifies some maintenance department expense accounts. And again, we need the financial department's support to help to establish these. Item 1 represents additions to capital, which would include the new equipment, improvements, or replacements of equipment. 2 would be the repair and the maintenance expenses, including breakdown repair, routine inspection, and preventative maintenance costs. And in there, we would also include major and minor overhaul costs. Item C under 2 is the upkeeping, such as, let's say, painting of the equipment. D, the replacement from wear, and E would be associated with building and ground repair. Now, item 3 would be dismantling expenses, where we're actually removing an asset from operation. And 4 would be the cost of providing and distributing utilities, such as electricity, steam, water, compressed air, and any other distribution system. And here's where we're really trying to become more definitive in terms of defining the actual cost, not only for maintenance, but this would help, especially when we're trying to develop both fixed and variable overhead expenses for operations. And item number 5 would be some miscellaneous expenses, which would include items such as experimental work that is expensed. That could be experimental work on a piece of equipment or tools, equipment cleaning, janitorial services, other items like trash removal, and one big one, all other services and maintenance not listed, could also include the removable of toxics and other chemicals so that we can meet the OSHA and EPA and other local, state, and local governmental requirements. And item 6 would be the various outside contractor expenses by contractor and then subsequently summarized by total expenses. So you can see from the data in this section, we have a wonderful opportunity to pull together all of the data elements that can support top management's request for financial analysis of the maintenance management program. Now, in closing, I'd like to make a couple comments relative to this particular seminar. This seminar is to address the individuals that are going to be responsible for the maintenance management function called purchasing. Now, there are data elements that were covered in this seminar that were not directly related to purchasing, such as the development of maintenance work orders, the storeroom, the inventory management program, and then the reporting functions against maintenance work orders. But as we identified in section number 1, when we looked at pages 3 and 4, there are 9 functions within the maintenance management organization. And those were identified on 3, and on 4, We identified the same 9 functions, but we showed you the integration of those functions with each other. One of the things that I have found in working with hundreds of companies and training thousands of maintenance personnel, that companies do not do a good or thorough job on training people in the maintenance management organization. We do not train people in terms of their interactive activities with other functions within the maintenance management organization. I take the approach, and I have never been proven wrong yet, that if we train our people, number one, in their specific area of responsibility, and then train them, number two, to show the interrelationship of their activity with other activities, that we're not only going to have a very intelligent person performing his or her initial task, but they will also support the interrelationship of all of the tasks within the maintenance management program. I am speaking from over 34 years of personal experience, and that's the way my seminars are put together, to address specific training issues, and secondly, and most importantly, to address the interrelationship of those maintenance management issues. So with those closing comments, those of you that are in the purchasing environment, I wish you continued success, and please continue to review the material not only in the video presentation, but go through that notebook until you know that notebook almost by what we call chapter and verse. So continued good luck, and we hope to see you at one of our in-house training programs.